Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Maxon booth here at SIGGRAPH 2023. I'm Matthias, aka Major VFX on all the socials. I'm accompanied by some of the world's leading artists when it comes to motion graphics and digital animation, VFX, one of which is something that if you haven't seen online before, is medical animation. Medical animation illustration is an entire field that is way smarter than I am, which I really like. I was just at AMI. Everybody there is usually like double majors, art and biology and chemistry, really smart, and also makes amazing work. So please welcome to the stage, Cameron Slayden.
Thanks, Matthias. So I'm going to start with our 1 minute, 60-second mechanism of action demo reel so you kind of get an idea of what we do. It's all cellular and molecular stuff. That's our specialty. So here we go. Sorry. All right, so that's a great example of it. If you want to check out more of what we do, you can always go to microversestudios.com. Today, there are a few things I want to show you, but the first thing is I want to talk about one of the things that I'm most excited about Cinema 4D having incorporated into its development, and that's Pyro. When I first saw, I'm going to show you some reference imagery. This is a cell that's moving, and I want to show you actually why that's important. So, a few years ago, I ran into this reference material. This is from NanoLive, which is they're a company that has a live action, or sorry, not live action, a real-time label-free monitoring system of cells. And when I saw what they were putting out, this is a macrophage. This is just something that eats other things, right? It eats cell parts and stuff like that. But if you look at around the edges here, there's this weird backwards flagged movement. And I noticed that in just about all cells, there's this weird, like, it's reaching out and constantly, it's not changing volume, but it's kind of doing this grab and pull effect the whole time. And I immediately, this was like 3 years ago, I immediately thought to myself, that I could do with a Pyro effect. I tried a bunch of different things. There was at the time not a lot of great tools, but as soon as Pyro came out with Cinema 4D, I realized that that was the way I could do it. And so if I go back and show the Pyro cell, this is just a quick render that probably has a few things that could be better about it, like you see little bits of the cell kind of appearing not in contact with the rest of it, but that could be fixed with a little bit of extra effort. The point being that this interacts with everything around it, and when you're building it, it does it real time. You can't do this effect with any kind of deformer or anything like that. And in medical illustration, we're always kind of having to come up with ways to simulate the things that happen in biology. Like, we learn the biology, we learn about how these molecules interact and how the cells move and so forth, and we say to ourselves, what deformer will make that happen? How do I communicate this effect? And so this is my setup. This is a setup for the same tool, and I'm going to break down how I went about doing it in a second. So we've got Pyro in a volume builder. And I'm going to go ahead and increase my project duration here so that we have more time, 630, why not? So it just kind of stays the same shape. I've got the voxels pretty low. The example I showed you a moment ago had pretty tight voxels, but I want to keep it really responsive because you can take things and make them interact real time. And look at that. That's so cool. Whew. But so this kind of real-time interactive response is one of the things I'm most excited about. So let's go ahead and build it. I want to preface this by saying that Pyro is relatively new, and I only just started using version 2023, so I think we might go on a little bit of an adventure together on this build. All right, so started by, just for the sake of this build, I've made a landscape. Usually when we're doing medical animation, we're going to create something that is evocative of a particular tissue type. But you know, for now, whatever that's going to be in a project, this is a pretty good stand-in for it. I'm going to take my borders off so I have just a nice, complicated surface for this thing to move over. And now, I could keyframe, like I'm going to make this my generator for my cell, and I could take this and kind of animate it moving everywhere, but I'm super lazy. Like I have a strong aversion to effort, so I'm just going to go ahead and do sketch, do a spline sketch here, and I'm going to enable snapping and make sure that it's snapping to polygons. And the reason I like to do that is just so I can kind of draw a line where I want this cell to go. And then just do a little align to spline tag on my sphere. Drop that spline in there. And what that does, I'm going to make this spline just a little bit more visible. So let's do arterial red. Yeah. And then I'll take this sphere and make that a little bit more visible too. Call it robin's egg blue. There we go. So I kept the cell tiny on purpose, but now what I have is essentially an animation track that I can animate. And all I have to do to get it so that sphere is not clipping through the landscape is just maybe raise it a little bit. So now I'm going to go ahead and hide that spline and scrub through my video here. In fact, maybe just play and rotate so we can see what's going on. All right, that's pretty good. We have a little jankiness happening because of the distribution of points on the spline. I'm going to totally cheat here and make a Mo spline because Mo splines automatically self-segment. And I'm going to set that spline to, or that object to spline mode. Go in and drag my spline into there. Double check that my subdivisions for the spline are, oh wait, not vertex, step. Setting it to step. So now every 10 centimeters, it puts a new point. So it's all very even, but I'm going to drop that step down to 1 centimeter. So I have a much more even distribution of points. And then I'm going to go ahead and hide that and set the Mo spline to my path. All right. There we go. A bit more even. We've still got some easing that's happening. And that's something that we might take care of at a later date. We'll see. I'm going to go ahead and increase the duration of my project. I like to set it around 600. That's 20 seconds. Typically, when we're producing medical animations, I find that I don't make my scenes longer than about 10 seconds. So if I give myself 20 seconds to make everything happen, I'm going to have an easier way of or I'll have plenty of space to operate in. The reason that I like to keep our scene length to 10 seconds is because it takes 10 seconds to move a piece of information from short-term memory into working memory, where it can be incorporated into a narrative. There's no reason to linger longer than that. You have to make something else happen. I like to do, if we're still talking about the same thing, I like to do a cut or something like that to a different angle. So anyway, piece of cognitive science there for you. So now it should be moving much slower. There we go. Leisurely, moving over the surface. No physics involved, nothing to explode on me. So that's great. All right. Now I'm going to play with Pyro. The nice thing about this is once you play with Pyro, once you like open it up and you start throwing, like just setting stuff on fire, you discover it's very easy to do. It's a wonderful, wonderful interface that just makes life. It's very fun to work with. So I'm gonna add a Pyro emitter tag to my sphere, and like let's just see what happens when I press play. Just out of the box. To me, this is amazing because for the last 20 years, like I'm not joking, 15 years, I've been wanting something like this and seeing how long it took to create like a Pyro effect. I mean, there are some other tools out there that are nice. Explosia is a great plugin for Cinema 4D. Embergen is a great standalone program that also does this full-time effect, but this is in Cinema 4D. This is Cinema 4D, and all that data is accessible to us. And we've got some clip through down here that I think I'd like to eliminate. Now, obviously, our cell is not going to be tall like this. We're going to get rid of that in a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and take my landscape, set it to collider. So now, just because of the integrated physics that Cinema 4D uses, it should be, yeah. So it is clipping, but that's because it's being produced already through, and you can see that it's actually got its own little border here. So if I raise my spline a little bit north, yeah, now we see it's actually impacting that surface. And that's going to give us our actual interactive cell interface. Okay, so I want to make a macrophage that's roughly spherical or has a roughly spherical shape and that is not interacting with gravity. So I'm going to go into my Pyro output. So when I put on the spline, the first thing it did was create a Pyro output object. And I'm going to preface this by saying I know very little about Pyro. You guys are getting like the results of my experimentation. There are some people here that know all about it because they literally developed it, and I'm not one of those people, but I'm just telling you what I've encountered. So you've got this Pyro output, and within the Pyro output you have access to something that's also in your simulation or in your project settings. Control D gives you your project settings, and you can go into your Pyro tag. All this information is also available inside your Pyro output, right? So it's all in there. So what I need to do is I need to turn off gravity because I could try to play with buoyancy and stuff like that. I don't think that's really necessary. All I want is for it to project this Pyro into the world. So now you guys get to watch me remember in real time how on earth I did it. Good, awesome. I'm super fast. I feel much less like a fool than I expected to feel. So now we've got this thing kind of projecting fire in all directions, but that fire isn't really going up. It's not being pulled in any given direction. And what the Pyro does is you can see it's got a very dense area and it fades out. And I can play with those tools, but before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and just dive in and get myself a surface. I'm going to number one. This is very important. First thing I have to do is I have to go into my. Is it the Pyro, or is it this tag? Gotta find it. Basic, no. Pyro output, scene, simulation, Pyro. It's in here somewhere. The data that is output from it. One moment. I know it's in here. I know I can find it. Oh. Here we go. Anybody who knows where the data output, feel free to shout out, because I want to make sure I get this. Found it. Okay, here it is, under Object, Pyro output, Object. So all I care about is this density data. On. All right, so now I have, you see that there's, it's being represented here. That needs to be on because if I just have it on export, it's not in the scene. It's only going to be when I cache it, when I output it to VDBs, to a big VDB stack. And I want it in the scene now so I can start to play with it. And now I can take that Pyro output and hold down Alt, and now it's inside of a volume builder, and you can see I've got an actual volume going on there. And I'm going to hide my sphere and hide my Pyro output. No, I'm not going to hide my Pyro output. I'm going to go to the Pyro scene and turn off visibility. Again, the viewport visibility off. All right, there we go. It's an adventure, everybody, and you're all in here with me. Okay, so next I'm going to put that into a volume mesher. Or sorry, that's a volume builder. I'll put that volume builder into a volume mesher. All right, and I have my very first kind of prototype slug-like cell kind of crawling along in there, and you've got this border that's happening where it is encountering the surface. What just happened? Oh, there we go. All right, why not? So, it's because my snap is on. There we go. Fix that. So it is encountering the surface down here, but there's a little bit of a barrier. There's a distance barrier, and that's because of the Pyro's voxels. I can get that closer if I go inside of my my Pyro. 0. There we go. Oops, that wasn't it. So I want to make sure that my my actual voxels themselves for the Pyro object are small enough so that I get a real surface out of it. So going here to my Pyro output object, Pyro scene. No. There's my noise. Okay, well, I guess the first thing I'm going to do is start playing around with my the actual the Pyro simulation. Here we go. Voxel size 1. So now my voxels are way tinier. They're like 1/5, and you'll note that we should be getting a bit more detail here. Now I'm going to decrease this to 3, so now I'm getting more detail in my cell. And when I get this down a little bit lower to 2, now you can see that we're starting to get that kind of cellular effect going on. And again, we've got a little bit of clip through, so I can raise my spline a little bit and get that to where it's no longer getting through. All right. So the nice thing about this is that this interacts with the elements around it. So when I create another object, such as a sphere or something like that, and make that a collider, this Pyro-based cell is going to interact with and kind of mush around this sphere. I'm going to go ahead and put it over here in this cell's way so the cell has to kind of get past it. And so we just get that little moment of drama there where the cell is just being harassed by whatever's in the scene. And you notice this is playing real time for me. This is not actually this is not taking a whole lot of effort. So it's very directable. Now the thing is that with that reverse flag effect that I was talking about, That's obviously not what's happening here. And in some storytelling cases, it's probably not necessary for us to have that reverse flag effect. But like, I'm kind of a geek, and I really want to have it. So I'm going to adjust the look of this just a little bit more and get it to kind of a place where I like it. I'm going to increase maybe, not that, I'm going to increase maybe my fuel burning rate up a little bit higher. See what that does, play around with things. See what I can do to pressure per fuel, get that up. Density per fuel. Just see what happens playing with these numbers. Yeah, this one was a good one. So by dropping this, I'm going to have a change in how much cell there is. Now it's kind of getting bigger and leaving like a gnarlier trail. Now we have all this crunchiness out here that comes from the fact that the voxels don't match up, or that comes from the fact that we can still see our voxels. Our Pyro voxel size is 1, but our volume builder voxel size is 2. So I can drop this down to 1, and now we'll really have what's coming out of that. Play just a little bit more, see what's going on here. And now we're starting to get a slowdown. And the slowdown is not because of the Pyro. The slowdown is actually because of the volume builder. And I'm going to add a little bit of other stuff to it. I've got this SDF smooth now. And I can, with this, I can start to play, and I want to get rid of those little extra bits that are hanging out here. With this SDF smooth, I can get it down to a point where I really like it. And then what I might do on top of that, I still have some weird sharp edges here and some visible polygons. What I might do is put that inside of a null, and then add a deformer, like a smooth deformer to that to help get rid of those. Where's our smooth deformer? Smoothing. Oops, yes. To help get rid of some of those sharp edges. Or not the sharp edges, but some of the polygons that we're getting. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. We can just go ahead and say that that's good enough for now. I mean, we're no longer playing at full real time, but this is a pretty solid cell that we've got going on right there. And I'm going to go ahead and make my volume mesher a little bit more visible here. All right. So I like where this cell has gone. So now, how do I get this cached? Anybody who knows me, who has talked to me for 10 minutes, knows that I am a big fan of cloud rendering. And there's a very particular package I prefer, which is Conductor. But in order to do that, you have to make something, a cache file, that can be uploaded and can be distributed to your instances, and they can all be rendered. Otherwise, every instance is going to be trying to figure out how to render only its one frame. And you'll note, if I click around here, a lot of times you lose if I just click out to here, I don't have, it just starts from there. So it won't be a continuous render. So to do that, I have to go here to cache. And before I cache, I'm going to make my object visible again, my Pyro scene visible. That's basic. Default. So I'm going to turn these guys off. If you don't turn these guys off, then for every frame that it outputs a VDB for, it's going to also output it's also going to have to generate this volume mesh. And so you can see it's going to generate these VDBs as fast as it can make these frames, which is fast, and save the VDB, which is probably maybe a little bit slow because it's so dense. And you can see here that now we're moving much slower. So whatever your caching process is, you'll want to make sure that you turn off the volume builders just so that you don't slow yourself down. All right. So now I'm going to go over here to cache, and I'm not sure where it's going to save to. Let's just double check that it's going to save to a place where I can find it nice and easy. I'm going to make a new folder called Pyro Cache. Open that one. Oh, no, I'm finding it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cache this Pyro. Let's just do that. Now it's doing it. Okay, good. Cameron Slayden, Pyro cache. Save. So now it's showing me everything, right? It's going to play through all 600 frames. And in retrospect, it might have been a good idea for me to maybe reduce it to 300 frames. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and do that because we don't need that many frames. And delete cache. Are you sure we want to delete all these files? I do. I'm going to go back and, oops, Control D, go to my project, reduce it down to maybe 300, so we have a total of that. And now I'm going to go back to my cache and cache it. Now I could cache the scene, so if there are multiple Pyro objects, it's going to be putting it all together. I haven't honestly gone through that yet. I was so excited, I just made one cell, but I suspect there's a lot of very interesting stuff that we could do here. There's a lot to unpack. And if you get into this kind of thing, please do email me. I'd love to hear about it. It's Cameron@microversestudios.com. All right, so we're going through. We're just making 300 VDB objects. I do love this tool. And in addition to making these Pyro cells, I know for sure that I'm going to be using Pyro for everything from cytokine releases to just stuff floating around in the scene. I mean, this is so cool. You could take any one of these VDBs. If you can make a Pyro scene where you like how the smoke is laid out, you could take that and put that just one VDB into a volume builder and use that as like your environment. Then you have smoke hanging in the air. And when we're like, as medical animators, we're working in these environments. I always say that biological systems are basically just spaghetti in a garbage can. It's just all kinds of trash everywhere. And so part of our job is to kind of convey that sense. All right, we're almost done here. We're getting up to 300. All right, there's our cache. So now when I play through, I should be able to just scrub through. It goes pretty quick. Man, look at that. This is the best. I love this. Okay, my object, going back to basic, set it to off. Now we can't see it, turn these guys back on. All right, now I'm still gonna run into issues with playback because of the VDB, or because of the volume mesher. I can probably reduce that a little bit by just making it the volume builder, and maybe taking off my smoothing deformer. But what we still have is it's still a forward playing thing. You know, it's still not. It doesn't have that backwards flag effect like I was talking about. So I'm gonna now turn off my Pyro outputs. Let's just say that I have that cell doing exactly what I want, but I have it doing exactly what I want backwards. Now I'm going to get a volume loader. And I'm just going to use that to bring in my VDBs. Just grab one, it'll bring them all in. And it's going to assume that I just want to play it all back normally because it thinks that I'm just a normal person. But in reality, what I want to do is not use animation. I want to keyframe the first frame as 300 and the last frame, who can guess what? 0. Now, when I go back here, I'm going to show you something you might have picked up on it, probably did because you're a discerning bunch. There's this kind of choppy start. That's because of Cinema 4D's native easing. And I only rendered this once. I wouldn't have sent it with that choppy start to a client. I would have re-rendered it and just sucked it up. But I didn't do that, and I'm lazy. Again, I don't like effort. What I'm going to do here is just kind of select these keyframes and make sure that they're set to linear. Right now they've got this easing. I'm going to turn them to, is that linear? I think it is. Oh no, key property spline. No, make that linear, boom. Okay, that's what we want. So now the playback is going to be, it shouldn't have any hitching. So I'm just going to watch it, see what happens. And Playback is not quite as fast. And I think that's because each of these VDBs, in order to play it, it has to load them. And if we just take a quick look, they're not small. You know, they're kind of big. And if we look at that folder, the VDB folder, let's look at the properties of this folder. Yeah, 16 gigs. You know, that's a lot. So we have to bear that in mind when we're going to be rendering online. But you know, it's worth it to be able to animate cells in a way that, you know, pretty much nobody does right now. So I had that volume loader. I already built this out to look the way I wanted. So I'm just going to bring the volume loader in and make that hidden. So now I've got this thing. Now I lost my SDF smooth because the volume loader got loaded above it. So I'm going to bring that back in. Looks like I still have some crumbs. Just want to get rid of those guys. There we go. And now playing back through. Get rid of that. Come on, guys. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. We've got some of those little nubs out there still formulating that I don't like, and I think that I could chase that for a long time. Ultimately, we're going to be playing with things like our surface threshold, like trying to find the sweet spot that doesn't give us any of those. This might be it. Increasing that or decreasing that surface threshold a little bit. Still get a little bit. Gotta watch out. So, yeah, there we go. Anyway, so now I've got this this cell. I'm gonna decrease that even further. Yeah. So this is the method that I have developed to make these cells. And I think that it's still under development, but I think it's a whole new way to approach cell motility, in particular things like macrophages, because you can have this thing actually crawl up to another object and consume it using this. And the way we would animate that, we would have to do it backwards. We would have to actually like take our Pyro output object and like animate it backwards, going up to, with the thing already in it, and then coming out of it. So that's something we could do. I'm going to pivot now, shift gears, because I'm running a little bit low on time. I want to hit lipid bilayers for a second, because this is a thing that is really close to my heart, and I think it's really important in our industry, in medical animation. One of the key things that we have to keep in mind is that the human eye is drawn to regularity. And the reason that the human mind is drawn to regularity is because every time that it exists, almost every time that it exists, it means that humans are near. You're walking around on the Serengeti, you see a row of something, that's because somebody put it there. And the presence of humans is a very important piece of information for survival. So we evolved to like snap to it. We recognize it, and that's why lipid bilayers are such a striking. There's such a striking. I'm going to go ahead and open a shot, but there's such a striking feature because they have this very organized line effect. And one of the mistakes that we can do, I'm going to build something like this in a sec. One of the mistakes that we can do is to have that line be too even, because in nature it's not that way. All right, so the principles of a lipid bilayer are that the lipids themselves look like a little dude with legs, and the little dude's head is hydrophilic, and the little dude's legs are hydrophobic, and so the electromagnetic properties force them to orient themselves so the legs of one layer face the legs of the other. And so I'm going to kind of demonstrate how to build that. Here we go. So first things first, I'm going to make a plane. I'm going to duplicate it and move it down a little bit. And I'm going to increase the segments. 40, 46. There we go. And with, yeah, very good. Excellent. And they're kind of offset. And then I'm going to take, I'm going to actually grab from this other Pyro cell no, not that one, from this other, the improved signaling. I'm going to grab my lipids here. I have them somewhere around here. Actin filaments, Here we go. I like to mix it up. I like to have a bunch of different lipid types because lipid bilayers are made out of all kinds of garbage, spaghetti in a garbage can, remember? They're made out of all kinds of different stuff. So I like to drop those in. This is what they look like. Right, this part is hydrophobic, this part is hydrophilic, and they form these lines. Now, I'll start by doing this really simply and just make my height segments 1 so that we're not overwhelming the machine with geometry. I'm going to be using matrices instead of a cloner, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and put these guys in a cloner to demonstrate what the end result is going to be. Cloners set to grid. I'm going to set it to object mode and then choose my plane. There we go. Now it's automatically set to surface. It's distributing them over the surface. When we have anything undulate or something like that, we need to make it can't be set to surface because we'll get weird popping. So I set it to polygon center. And I'm going to rough this up in just a minute to make it a little bit more chaotic. And then so this is connected to plane dot 1. I'm going to just duplicate the two of them. And then this one's plane dot 2. Turn it upside down. So this is roughly what it looks like. I'm going to hide the planes. So this is roughly how a lipid bilayer organizes itself. This is obviously way too even. We definitely don't want it like that. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a more chaotic plane. So the way I like to do this, the way I like to make these planes nice and chaotic, is I'll take my height segments, jack them up, and I'll put this inside of a generator that is a polygon reduction tool. And you see that we start out by, it automatically makes this really chaotic pattern. And I'm going to increase my planes subdivisions to give the polygon reduction tool more to play with. And I'm going to increase that. All right. This is satisfactorily chaotic. I'm just going to press C, make that editable. And then I'm going to do a polygon subdivision surface. So now I'm getting a lot more polygons. I'm going to jack it up to 3 maybe? Let's do 3. The reason I have to do both is because if I just do the subdivision viewport and I make that editable, I lose what, when I make it editable, it references what is in the viewport, or what is in the render setting, not the viewport. So I'll make that editable. And the reason I'm making it editable is because I don't need any of that previous data. I'm intentionally ruining that previous data. So now I've got this nice subdivision surface, and I'm going to create a matrix object. Oops, not put it in. There we go. Go to object, mode, subdivision surface. Again, it's spreading it out over the surface, but here I want to do the distribution to polygon center. Now I've got a pretty good distribution here. And at this point, I can start to play with like a random effector to move them around a little bit, maybe even a push apart or something like that. I'll go ahead and add just a little bit of a random effector and then reduce that down to very, very little, just enough, because this is still a little bit too even. I want to mess it up. And the height of these guys, the actual, like, their elevation, in reality, it's more like this. Like, it's pretty chaotic. Lipid bilayers are spaghetti in a garbage can. All of biology is. So, but because we have clients and we're trying not to, make them angry, I'm just going to make it a little bit pretty subtle. And then here's the best part of all of this. This is my favorite part. So I'm going to duplicate this, turn this guy upside down. Oops. And give myself just a little bit of space between them. All right, so matrices. You can go into, I got to set my renderer Control B to get to my renderer and go to Redshift. And I now have access to, where's my Redshift Object Tag? Redshift Object. And I can, within this tag, it reads a matrix object as particles. And I can choose to make them point instances if I want, or I can choose to make them custom objects. And that's how I get a really easy to manipulate. I just drag this onto here. Why not? Really easy to manipulate thing that shows up in the IPR. Oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry. Yes, I want to stop it, but actually that's kind of doing what I wanted. Where is the IPR in the new one? Is that it? Let me go to my Redshift menu, render view. Is that it? Render view? Yeah, why not? There we go. So I can still, you see that I can still see my my subdivision surface, so I need to make that hidden. And my guys are all on their side, so I'm just going to rotate, transform to 90 degrees in one angle. I'm not sure which one. Got to just figure it out. 90? Is that it? That's not it. 90. There we go. So now, and I don't have any lights in the scene, and we should probably add a light just to make it so it doesn't look lame. Where's my lights? Sorry, I've only recently moved to Redshift to version 23, and some of the things are a little bit hidden. All right. Well, that's neither here nor there. Oh, there we go. This is light. Huh, there we go. So, bring this up above. Redshift is pretty great with its real-time interactive render. You can. One of the nice things about it. One of the nice things about it is that it's very directable. Got a little glitch going on here that is not allowing me to rotate or to move my object directly in the viewport. All right. There we go. Oh, so I just had a glitch that made it so that no matter what I did, I was always zooming, like whether I was trying to grab something or whatever. A good way to get rid of that is to switch your viewport. So I just pressed F5, which gives me everything, and then when I come back to F1 for my main viewport, I get a better. It'll go back to giving me the control that I need. That's a glitch that it's been around for a while, and you eventually figure out how to get past it. So here's what we're seeing now. We have this nice lipid bilayer that is crowded, but is not is still completely procedural, and still I can. Now what I like to do actually is I like to take these guys and put them inside of a null and start to add deformers to that. So. I'll throw in a displacement deformer. Where's my displacement? Displacer. And drop that into my null. So now it's affecting everything inside the null, both the subdivision surface. And then go into shading. I'll add a little noise pattern. And I'm about to wrap up here. So now, notice everything kind of changed angle. That's because each polygon itself, every polygon of these planes, is now being modified by this displacer. So, and I can, if I want, I can kind of make these guys visible and make the matrices invisible, so I can have a better sense of how these, the angle of each polygon upon which each matrix is being, each matrix is being placed, how they're being affected. So it looks like I need to significantly increase the size of this noise to get what I want. And I can even make that noise animated and start to get myself sort of an animated surface, cell surface, that we want to be. Now I want to also note it looks like they're kind of sandwiching in on each other. So in order to avoid that, we need to set our displacer object to go on a planar distribution. So now I want it to go on the Y. So now it should be taking everything. They should be moving at pretty much the same. Actually, that's not true. It's because they're offset from one another. If they're at the same place, they should be moving. I see the problem here. It's because it's upside down. There we go. Yeah, so at this point, now they're being manipulated. Go back to here to NC. That's strange. What I want is this. I want two objects that are perfectly sandwiched together. I'm going to make this one use the second subsurface object. There we go. 2. This one gets 2. All right, now when I do my renderer, that's not it. When I do my, is this it? Redshift render view. When I do my interactive preview render, press play, one of them is upside down, or at least it should be. Yeah, they're all facing the same direction. So I need to rotate the transform of one of them by 180 degrees. There we go. 180. This one is going to be going to subdivision surface, this subdivision surface. There we go. So now they're distributed a little bit better. And I've got this nice chaotic surface that, again, it undulates with the animation so that I get a much more fluid effect. And there's a lot more that we can do. We can start to add jiggle deformers, colliders, and so forth to these planes to start to modify how these matrices are being affected. All right, I'm 5 minutes past the time that I was supposed to be demoing, but I would love to take any kind of questions that anybody might have about any of the things I've shown or anything else having to do with scientific animation as it applies to Cinema 4D. All right, so now I'm taking this off. Clear. I'm going to set this to color. All right. Well, I'm probably going to be dropping off really soon. However, I want to point out displacers are additive, one on top of the other. So now I've got this displacer that's a color. I can use a field. I'm going to create a spherical field that impacts the displacer. Oh, notice it took a second for the thing to catch up. If I put this above my matrices, Cinema 4D will process the surfaces first before processing the matrices. Now, with this, I can actually start to do something cool with the displacement. I can displace something upwards here. And I also want to point out, this is one thing I love to do, create a pose morph. It's my rigging tags, pose morph. And you can start to do some pretty interesting things here with and I'm going to go for points. Where's my points? Yeah, so now I'm going to just switch to polygons mode and use my... Actually, I don't even have to switch to polygons mode now anymore. I'm just going to use this to pull that down. Magnet tool. Pull it down. Actually, I'm going to do it to both. Set it to points mode. Grab both of these guys. Use my magnet tool to pull them down. And so now I have an animatable... oops. I permanently changed one of them and not the other. They both have to be points mode. There we go. Now I'm going to drag them down like so. So I can I now have this method of animating a chaotic and potentially dynamic lipid bilayer using these tools. Now this will also work with a jiggle deformer, which is kind of interesting, a collider deformer. And I'm going to go demonstrate or play around over in the Dell the Dell booth and experiment with using cloth tags on matrices, because that turns each matrix into a collidable particle that will work with fields and everything. So that's going to be very interesting. It's very early in my R&D for that one, so I don't have anything to show you guys on that. But probably my next presentation will be something along those lines. All right, thank you very much, everybody.